Okay. Looks like this is working. So before I encourage you to open PHP Fiddle and try out some of these as we proceed. So we learned that PHP is very useful because it has all these built-in functions. So another useful built-in function is the date function. And with the date function, you can specify different formats as to how you want your date to be formatted. And as you can see here, there are a couple examples. So please go ahead and try out at least one of them. So you have the option of using these 4 letters, and then you can say if you want them connected to the dash, slash, or dot, or just the year. So try 1 or 2 of these for starters. Yeah.
I don't know if I learned this already, but I relearned it at the beginning of the day. Like that you can, I didn't remember that you could put your variable directly inside your string.
If you double quotes.
Yeah. But then if you single quotes, you can't. I just was looking at a thing that showed that, and I was like,
You like me?
Yeah, that's why the single quotes are more higher performance.
All right.
so this is nice.
So let's see here.
33.
PHP. All right. Did you try this out? No problem? Okay. All right. And also there are several very useful functions that you can use for checking variable names. Sorry, variable values rather, not the names. Such as is a function set, is a function empty, and is a function numeric. If you're expecting, for example, the user to enter, let's say, a price or age, some kind of number, not a price, not an age, but price, a better example, then you can check that they didn't put maybe the string 3 instead of the number 3. And so the way this would work is you're going to call the functions by passing them the name of the variable. And if the variable name, for example, has been set, this is going to return true. If it has not been set, it's going to return false. And we are going to talk about ways to use those in our conditional statements. You can also check, even if a variable has been set, is it empty? Sometimes the field is required, so it should not be left empty. So you can check, is it empty? And if the user left it empty, this is going to return true. So you can then do, as we're about to learn, conditions. If you don't want it to be empty, then you can say, please enter a value here and do not allow them to proceed in your program. And as I mentioned, you can check if, let's say, a price is a numeric value, right? So these are useful functions to have. And we have a couple examples. We are going to see those put into practice. Right now, we're just learning the code snippets. And so we did type up the product discount calculator on the first or second type of class. And I think that a lot of what we did was maybe not familiar to most students. And so we're going to now go over the code again, armed with a new knowledge that we gathered last time. And hopefully this will help make more sense, right? Because it illustrates a lot of typical things you do with a PHP application. So if you recall, I can learn it, I guess, but do you remember? So we did this app where you put in, I guess I can just show you to refresh your memory. Let's see here. So I have this already in a live link, so I can just run it and show you what it does. And then we'll look at the code. So you can enter a product description, cat food, price $159, 20% 20% discount. And then it calculated for us the discount amount, the discount price, and it populated all the fields with all the labels with data. So that's what this product discount calculator is. This is the result. And also note that the first page, we were entering through a page called index.html. We had index.html for the HTML part of the page, and then the result was displayed from a different page, from a display underscore product.php. So we also learned where we specify who is going to process the file. So let's take a look again at the index page. And if you have any questions, as always, please go ahead and ask. So again, the action attribute in the form field is going to specify what file is going to process the form, right? And this is the display discount.php in this case. And since there is no path here, what is this telling us about where this file is located?
In the current working directory.
It's in the same directory as the index.html. Otherwise, you'd have to specify the path, right? And then the method is post, and by now everyone knows that post is the more secure method that we use with forms as opposed to get. And then we have the names attribute are what is going to be a pair with a value for each of the input fields, right? All right, and then we have the call from display discount.php, so that's the other file. So when you click submit here, the page is going to transfer control to where? Again, just to be sure everyone is clear. Display discount.php, and then we go here. And so these are the PHP tags, and the first thing we do is get it out from the form. Now we're using filter input. We talked about filter input last time, I believe. This allows you to filter the input from the post to get arrays, and input post is a constant that maps to the $_post array, right? Does this make sense? I feel like maybe we should look this up real quick. So input post with the $, PHP. Yeah.
We had to do it in class, like, I typed it all in. That's not what we had to type in.
We didn't do the filter.
Okay, so yeah, so actually this one has maybe a few additions to what we did. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is a new addition based on what we learned. Okay, to make it better. All right, so so filter input is going to get a specific external variable by name and optionally filter it. And I told you that if you have those square brackets in a syntax definition, that means that, can I help you? Okay.
To get access code to email.
Is that the IT office right there?
All right. So the square brackets in a syntax definition mean that these are optional parameters. So you don't actually have to put the filter, right? But it's going to take the type and the string variable. And the type is one of these constants here. Okay, I can't find it right now, but essentially they're constants that are going to allow you to access the arrays for those different types. Does this make sense? So if you're working with a post form, then that means that your form values are going to be stored in a $_post super global array, right? And so by using input _post, you access the array. So that's what that is. And then the name of the variable, yeah.
So we use the filter just to make sure that the user is using the variables that you want to use.
Right. And also if we use the filter, we also can ensure that they are of the right type. right? So it's sort of giving us a level of data validation by filtering through. And so we do the same with the other two variables. And so the filter input, I guess one other thing to show here, is going to return something to us to give us information. And what it's going to say is, if the filter failed, it's going to return false. Or otherwise, there's some other options, but essentially it will tell us true or false, so that we know, as a result of running this function, if we got the right values or not. And these are the Boolean data types that are only true or false. So this is what the input filter is going to return to us. That's how it's helping us. So now if it returned false, we know that we should not proceed because we don't have valid data in the array. Does this make sense?
Is there a simple way to check what it returns? Can we just echo it and
Well, you can look at it, but if you want to use it programmatically, you probably want to do something like that. I mean, it's simpler to use a function that was written for you rather than having to write it yourself, right? Okay, I think what I'll do is, it seems like there are some questions. So the W3 Schools has a pretty nice, let's see, let's take a look at it here. So the filter input function gets an external variable, such as from a form, and optionally filters it. And it's used to validate several different data types. So here is a snippet. So what they are doing here is, if the filter input, so first of all, filter input email, but then we encounter something new, which I haven't told you about yet here, which is the exclamation mark. So I don't know if this is making things, essentially the exclamation mark means not, so it flips. This is just not getting easier, it's getting more complicated. But the exclamation mark flips a value if it's true to its reverse. So here, what it means is, if not the filter, so if the filter returned true and then you add the exclamation mark, it's going to make it false, right?
For PHP, can you also use the not equals, the exclamation and equal sign?
Yeah, you can use this as a compound statement. You should be able to do that.
Okay.
And so then you're going to say the email is not valid, otherwise the email is valid. And this is how you would use the filter input. And here is the syntax, and these are the types that it takes. So instead of taking simple types like numbers or strings, it takes these types, right? So they're just more complex types, but they're data types just like strings or numbers. And so far we're familiar with get and post because we've been working with them. And later on we can also use it to validate cookies and then some more complicated types. I mean, it's a little bit confusing, I suppose. And then the filter is optional, so you don't have to put a filter, but you can. And if you put a filter, it will check the type of data if it's correct. So if you're expecting an email, it's going to check filter validate email. So you plug this in, and also somewhere here there should be a list of the types of filters. So these are like, you can think of them as wrappers, so it's easier for us to work, right? Instead of having to write our own code to filter validate email, we just use this constant, and it's going to do it for us.
You can also use it in place of the special jars. Interesting.
Yeah, the special jars. Yeah, you can use it in addition to it. Well, we still need, because it doesn't do that kind of filter, it's different. That's a great point. Right. This one just checks if the type is correct. It doesn't convert it to a different type. That was a good point. All right, here we go. So here is on the PHP manual a list of the validate filters. So you can use any of these filters in the filter input function. And you can filter to check if a value is a Boolean, email, float, int, and so on, right? And here is why. Because in PHP we don't say, when we declare the variables, we don't declare the types. So it's just a variable. And so we need to somehow ensure that it is the right type of variable for what we're doing. Does this make sense? All right, and when we do this, maybe when we do the program, it might make more sense. But I think that's all for now. It's just an available function we use to filter the input. All right, and then after we have ensured that the input is as we want it and stored it in the variables, then we're going to calculate the discount and discounted price. And here we multiply by 0.1 because assuming the user entered discount percent 20, we need to convert it to percent. So it's going to shift 2 decimals and make it 0.2, right? And then we apply formatting. So that's another function we talked about, number format. And now we know that the second argument tells us what, Nima? Do you remember?
Yeah, this is 2 decimal.
2 decimals. So you can specify how many decimals, right? And then you can also use a dot and then dot, for example, percent. And what does this do? Sam? John, what's your name? What's your name? Max. Do you remember what happens here? What
So
mean?
the dot concatenates it.
Right. So it's going to concatenate a string which represents a percent. So when the user sees it, it's going to have a percent there. All right, and then we output the product description to the user here. And why do we have the HTML special chars?
To eliminate, to prevent people from using the XSS Java code in Chapter
Right, JavaScript code.
JavaScript.
Because the product description came from the user, it didn't come from us. We didn't create this variable, so the user entered it, so we need to make sure they didn't add some script tags there. And the same for the other 2 that came from the user. And then the discount formatted and discount price formatted. We're not using the HTML special chars because we created those in the program. So therefore, we know where they come from. All right. Well, here is a new topic, an opportunity for you to use PHP Fiddle to try out a few things. So we learned about the arithmetic operators, but you can also do use the relational operators to do comparisons between different forms of data. So, for example, if you wanted to check if the user's name is Harris or a certain test score is equal or let's say greater than 50 and so on. So these are the what we call relational operators. They check relationships between 2 variables. And the way you can try this out would be the following. Well, actually, let me show you the if statement and then. So I have to build up a little more and then you'll try it out. And then, so Alec, this is your question, I think, right? The not equal. So the double equal is going to check if 2 variables are equal. And this one, what does it do? What's that?
Not
equal. How about this one?
Less than,
How about this one?
less than equal to.
Less than or equal, so it's different in terms of the logic. All right. And so they have, they're called logical operators, and they have a order of precedence, or actually only one is here, the not. So the first one that's going to get evaluated is the not. So the exclamation mark means not. Essentially, it's very easy. It just flips around whatever you have. It makes it, if it's true, it only works with the Boolean. If it's true, it's going to make it false, and the other way around. And then the double ampersand is going to mean what? Does anyone know?
They both have to be true.
They both have to be true. This is the logical end. So maybe we can write this on the board as a reminder. I don't know if you guys took a logic class, but so the exclamation mark is the same as not. And then the ampersand is the logical end. And as Brent said, the logical end to be true, both sides of it have to be true, right? And then the pipe is the logical or. And for this to be true,
At least
one
one
or
of
the
them.
other. Right? And so it's useful to create various logic in our programs. So the first one is checking if the age is greater than 17 and the score is less than 70, then do something. Otherwise, do something else. Maybe we should talk about the shortcut, the double. Shall we? Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. So why am I telling you about all these true and false and ends and not? Well, the reason why is because we can use these in conditional statements to add decision-making properties to our programs. For example, depending on certain conditions, we want to take different paths in our code, right? We don't always want to do the same thing. If the investment variable was empty, then we want to just tell them, you need to enter some value here. But if they put the right value, then we can do some work with it. Does it make sense? Right? And so this turns out it can have more than two conditions. You can have multiple conditions. And in PHP and in other languages, we use the if, it's called the if statement, to make this possible. You can just have an if. You can have an if with one or more else if. These are optional. And also you can just have an else. And note the else, you're not checking for anything. There is no parents here after the else. The else is just there, so it's going to catch anything else. If none of the before were true, it's going to just do the else statement here. But what is it checking? Like the if is checking if it's empty. So it's always checking, even though it might look complicated, it's always checking a Boolean if it's true or false. Right? So because these are always going to evaluate true or false. Is it empty? It's either true or false. Is the investment less than or equal to 0? It can be only true or false. So no matter how complicated inside the parentheses, it's going to evaluate true or false. And then you can add compound conditional statements such as if a variable is empty or if the number is not numeric, then or the investment is less than 0, then we have a problem, right? We want our logic of our program is that we have to meet all these conditions in order to proceed with our calculation, otherwise we can't. And finally, well, not finally, but in addition, you can also do nested if statements. You can nest one if statement inside another. And this is, as you can see here. And you have to be very careful with the curly braces because it's easy to make a typo. So for example, we have an if statement here, and then in the else, we have another if statement. So you can nest like that if that's what your code requires you to do. So in addition to if statements, which make decision-making possible, we also can often require to do something else, which is to do the same operation multiple times, right? And to do so, we have loops. And there are a couple of different types of loops. The while loop is one of them. And the while loop is going to have a counter, and it's going to do the code as many times as you say here. So this is an example you should be able to run in your PHP fiddle. So go ahead and type this up, and then you just need to echo the message to see the result. So make sure to add an echo to your message here.
Is it a convention that the curly braces are always starting on the same line?
That's a very, this question is just really a matter of preference.
Okay.
You just have to be consistent. You should be consistent. I like it better like this, but sometimes you see the curly brace starting on the next line. And I think we should also create ourselves an example with the if statement for you to type here. So we'll do this next together. Let's see. I think I'm going to type this with you so we can play with it a little bit. Oh,
You don't need the parentheses to echo.
no, you don't need
No, okay.
parentheses. Oh, okay. It doesn't like it because the messages.
It was not there earlier. Right outside the while.
Let me first check if I have any typos.
Because mine's doing the same thing.
Yeah, I probably need to declare this is just a snippet. So message is equal to empty string. And this way you should be able to also print outside of the while. There we go. All right.
How did you do that?
So you need to declare the message variable outside of the while loop. And you can start it by assigning it an empty string. And then, so go ahead and work through this. Go ahead and finish it and learn it for yourself. And then we can talk about it if there are any questions. So again, in addition to what is in the text in the slides, you need to add declare the variable message out here. Or you could actually declare it in there too. Anyway, that's fine like that. If you declare it inside the loop, you'll not be able to print it. So let's see here. If you finish this and you're able to run it and it works for you, then try changing the value 5 to 10. Don't change it to 100, but maybe 10. And run it again and see what happens.
Why are we leaving the echo statement outside of the while loop?
Well, because we wanted to print, I was going to show you, we could print it inside the while loop, but it's going to have a different result. So it's going to print each time.
Oh, I see.
Sometimes you want to just print it, forgetting the final result. So now it's going through, Amy, I just ran, so take a look here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's showing it every time.
Got it, yeah, that makes sense.
But that was a good question. So we put the echo outside. Usually in a loop like this, you want to print outside of the loop. So after everything has been finished, then you print from outside of it. So if I wanted to add a comment here, do you remember how we can add a comment?
Forward slash.
Okay, this is a while loop example, and you may want to save this, it's up to you. You see how we created here the separation with the pipe, so we're concatenating the two variables and the pipe. Any questions?
Yeah. But I can get the same thing by taking that first message out and then putting the echo in. The result looks the same.
Yeah,
Put
you
it
can,
inside
sure, you can do the smarter one way, but this is one way you can do it. You're just assigning message, the new value and continuing on. Sorry, Liz, question?
Yeah, why do we have to concatenate the counter and the pipe sign to the variable message? Why can't it just be message?
It can, we're just doing this because that's just what the example is. So if you just did a message, what is it? It would not really, it would just be, here, let's do this. Let's say that message is equal to hi. So play around with this while statement, okay? And just see. And then if we took this out, what do you expect to see before we try this? I want to hear your guess here. If we just say message equals message.
Just keep repeating the same thing.
No, it'll just say high five.
Because
It'll
we
just say
didn't,
high five.
we haven't set equal to, where's my, so it's only replacing the message, right? So what it's doing is it's just replacing the message with the same message because we just have equal. So every time it turns, just replaces it, if we did that. But it's worthwhile to play around and ask these questions and just see the different behavior. So what if we did that? Let's see here. Well, I didn't expect that.
Because you're doing plus equals.
Oh, equals
and
plus.
So it's converting it to.
Good.
Number.
Right, that's what it is. Oh, I'm still doing it. So it's okay because it's seeing the plus. It's wanting to convert it to a number, and that's why it's
So
doing
you
that.
want dot.
Right. So you can do dot equals, so you can preserve the string. So if we wanted to do that, so just again playing around with it. And then we are going to essentially, every time we go through the loop, it's going to print out the value of the variable. And then add to it. And the reason it's so many and not just 5 is because why do you think, you might think we should just have 5, right? But there are many more. And why do you think that is? And then we'll move on. Any guesses?
Because it's only specifying that the counter variable is, you go through that specific file.
Oh, because the message that you assigned from has increased in size.
It keeps on assigning on and on and on. It's cumulative.
So the first time it adds 1,
That's
the next
right.
time it adds 2, then it adds 4.
That's right. So if you say dot equal or plus equal, it's going to preserve what's there and add on to it. And that's why it's not just 5 times, but yeah, it's a compound. Or, compound is a good word. All right, so this was an example of a while loop. I would like to do a simple version example also of a if statement. The one on the board was requiring too much setup. So let's, if you want to save this here, go ahead. All right, so let's do a statement from the W3 schools with a date and the if statement. So if you want to save this, it's up to you. D is equal to date of H. So H is the hour, right? So we're getting the date with a built-in date function, and we say, give us the date in an hourly format. Let's see here. All right, and then if, so we're now using an if statement. So $D is the variable, is less than 10. Echo, good morning. Else if $D is less than 20,
Do double quotes around the 10 have significance, or could they be single quotes?
they can be single quotes, yeah. Echo, in fact, I'll make mine single too. Echo, good evening or a good day. Else, echo, good night.
You need to separate the else if.
Yeah, we need to close. So yeah, you always have to. No, I think. Let's
See.
see else.
Else, and then space.
I think it's working now because the color's right.
That's funny.
Let's see. Well, we have to run it and see, but I have to finish typing, so just give me a second.
Okay.
So else echo. So we need the brace here though. Echo. Good night. So let's see here. This is going to work. All right, so it works, and according to the time we are in, which is less than 20, so this is a 24-hour clock, then it tells us good day, right? And so this was an illustration from the laboratory schools I just picked up here of using conditional if then else statements to give a different customized greeting based on the 3 divisions of the 24-hour clock. So if we were here after 8 p.m., it would say
20.
good night.
Oh, yeah.
Because 20 is, all right, let's see here. Let's do this a little differently. So how about comment out the D and then add a variable number, num, and let's set it equal to 5. And then we're going to change this program instead of strings to work with a number. And so we'll say if number is less than 5, echo less than 5, it doesn't really matter. Else if number is greater than, so less than or equal to 5. Let's see here. If number is less than or greater than or equal to, less than or equal to 5, then greater than or equal, and we just have 2 or else. Okay, so let's see. I guess that should be good. Make sure let's close this here.
Why do you need the quotation marks around it if you're using the date function, and you don't need it if you? I mean, I know why you don't need it. If you
the reason we use it with the date function is because that's presented as a string, That's just what the date function is going to give us, a string.
Okay.
But here we change it to a number.
Okay.
All right, so let me see if this runs. Yeah.
Getting these from the W3 schools, right?
Well, this one I'm just making up, but the first one I got from the. Okay, sorry. So yeah, I can post this to. I'll post it so you can finish it up.
The second, or the one on the also, is that, did you put?
Yeah, I have a syntax error, and as you can see, what I do is I just run them so I can get the error. So line 7, I have an unexpected double. So
Should it
let's.
be greater than equal to?
Let me see here, just a second.
You need a closing.
So if it's less than 5, it's less than 5. Otherwise, if it's greater than or
Your
equal,
semicolon needs to be.
One at a time.
go.
You need a dollar sign.
Oh, for the num, so that's going to come up for sure. Thank you. Okay.
And you've got a brace to the right of the parenthesis. Well, semicolon that should be between parenthesis and the close brace
On which line?
on line 8,
Oh yeah, we need a semicolon here. Okay.
and no semicolon after the brace.
And no semicolon after the break. Okay, there we go. So that's good. And now we just need to make this. So it said if it's greater than 5, less than 5. And then, so if it's less than 5, less than 5. If it's greater or equal to 5, greater or equal to 5. So let's see here. So greater or equal to 5. So the reason I wanted this example is because now you can change this number and you can see for yourself that it's going to, if you make it be 3, then we're going to expect to see what? The condition less than 5. Oops. Yeah, there you go.
Now, you
Yeah, it's
could
good.
code that without the else, and it would still produce the same thing, right?
Yeah, you can, in some,
Without the it, else, if, just with the else.
right.
else.
Basically, there are a lot of different things you can do here, and we're just trying to learn the basics, but you can make them different, and you have a lot of flexibility, actually, how you want to construct it. Okay, so I will stop here and make sure that everyone has this working, and let me post a link to that date example on Canvas real quick. Canvas. And make sure to try changing the number again so you can verify it for yourself. You can make this more complex as well by adding a range, right? So if you want to try this, try making it in a range between 5 and 15, for example. Try that, okay? Since you're looking at me, you're done, so go ahead and try it. Date.
Check this out. So if I do lowercase h in here, it's good morning. So if I do an uppercase h, and it says, you know why?
No,
I don't mean that. Let's see, like, so like with the date,
because it still would work out. 0500 is
it's still the
yeah,
hour.
right. And that's still less than.
And where's it grabbing the date from? I guess like. That's interesting. I switched my H for my date from uppercase to lowercase, and it changed the message.
Okay, that's interesting. So
So I was
what you
wondering,
can
like,
check
I
is
didn't
like
think it would be
date,
case sensitive.
date argument, date function, argument. When you finish with this, take your first break. It's time for break actually, and see you in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Date function arguments, PHP. So let's see. I mean, there's a lot to the date function.
I'll bet you. Oh, so wow. Uppercase. Oh yeah, look at
Here you
that.
go. So it's a 12-hour versus
Ah.
24-hour.
That's so clever.
Okay.
It's interesting because when it comes to the date, you need every permeation that you could ever want. Like, so that's fun ways of figuring it out. That's crazy. What was just on assignment real quick? Assignment. Is this assignment 1 or 2?
One was just setting it.
We'll get a good grade on that.
With no credit. You don't have the pictures in there. Okay.
So future, oh yeah, the future value calculator. And she wants it to give you alerts.
No, if you see, if I like go here, see, no error.
Oh,
But
if it, so she wants it set up only to give you an error if they're empty.
no, there's a whole series of errors possible. I don't know where I got them from. I think she just changed it. It seemed to get a lot smaller, the assignment. See, this is where I got it.
Yeah.
Oh, because I modified it just says to change the existing program that way, and this is the existing program.
Ah, that's right. Okay.
So I moved it into the index file, and this wipes them out, and then they get tested, and they fail.
Always?
Not just the first time. Well, they fail anytime. They're not supposed to fail the first time through.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Okay. Start to display the results below the form instead of on.
Yeah, this should be the very, okay, that's before. But if I compared, what I did is I compared the output from.
So you only try, so the assignment is to take this and make the results be on the same page.
Right.
That's it, right?
Yeah, it's like.
But and then all the errors were built into it. Is what you're saying?
They were in the the display. So then this is the way it looks if it's got successful stuff. Yeah, you started the index when it first loads. It's not supposed to give an error when it first loads.
And so your problem is the error when it first
Trying to
loads.
figure out how to get rid of that error. I can get rid of the one error, then the next error happens. I mean, it's basically makes the code not work. But
Yeah.
so help. Aaron, help.
It takes me a minute for my mind to like get in the zone. I'm trying to think about it.
You should try running that existing app first, and then you see what it's
I need
supposed
to
to do.
finish the last two
Well-
assignments for Java. and then
Assignments to-
I feel guilty that
Really? You should feel good.
I'm seeing if I have it.
10 minutes.
Well, I need to
See if mine
be
works.
done with that so that I can just keep concentrating on this. And I still have
You're
one
checking
more
last
assignment
quarter.
for students.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I'm seeing if mine functions.
And I wasn't
The-
really going to take some classes, but I did. And I was also not-
40 /
Overture.
Well, you know, summer was just like so bad for me that I feel like I need to catch up.
No, it's fine.
That's all I was gonna say about that. That's like literally all I was gonna say about it.
Yeah, I know, we talked.
Yeah, we're almost like to the other side and I'm really happy when I feel that way.
Well, Stani,
Yeah.
maybe you could,
Yeah, go ahead and ask her.
on my, when you run the existing application,
Okay.
it goes, when it first displays the form, all the fields are blank and there are no error messages. When I put it into one file, I can't keep it from displaying error messages on the first load.
Okay, I think after we look at the future variable, it might answer this question.
Okay.
So we need to, let me just show you the code.
Okay.
We need to move along though, because we have to finish showing you the
So they can do their homework.
homework. I know it's the whiles and the ifs always take longer. They actually more organized.
Unless you have coding experience, then I think it's like.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, a couple more minutes and we'll resume.
So mine's working.
How about you,
I did
Rick, were you
something
able
right.
to keep up with the?
That's
But
good.
you've got like spaces there, you're using, you're using HTML there instead of
All right,
straight.
so give them error.
See,
So
this
let's
is
go
the way
on
that
six.
the spec works. Remember, I'm all about
Okay,
the
so
spec.
can I make?
Wait,
So this
what's
is,
wrong with this and that?
for Echo, you don't want
You got
the
lines in
curly braces
between.
are only for if statements, so.
Investment amount?
Look on the spec.
Oh, and theirs is just
So
echo.
if you
I just
really
used, I
define
just put in echoes. I'll show you here.
I never even
So-
noticed that till right now.
completion here.
Well, I always try to make mine look exactly the way,
Well, I thought I did. You just detailed.
I'm used to doing this kind of stuff professionally, so. This is, not that different. Where are my echoes here?
Huh.
So let's see here, if the number is less
Should
than
be
5,
after
less
the
than
buttons,
5.
yeah.
less than
Okay. See, it echoes them. So I can put a break and it just goes down to the next line instead of, if you put it in the paragraph, it goes down the line. Goes down an extra line. Paragraphs that are a double space.
10, wait there.
Also, why don't we close the breaks the way that the book shows?
Close the
Not
break.
this book, the book that, the HTML and CSS book that's really nice.
Close the which one?
The BR in the book, it's got angle
Inside,
bracket,
so
left
the
angle
semicolon goes
bracket,
inside,
BR
right?
space,
And
forward
because part of the
slash,
statement and they.
left angle, right angle,
Yeah. Because it just means break.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got them, just plain BR.
Yeah.
I know it works.
I don't know
But the
why.
book, the reference material has it this way, so I'm doing it this way.
Yeah. That's one thing that's like interesting because from instructor, like they changed. And can't you put the
But you're okay,
has to
no,
be
seriously.
before? It's like when you close a div, it has to be before. But which makes me think I need to like re-go over this assignment because it's one of those things like as I read through it one time, I remember what it was.
This is wrong.
Because we wanted to print out the counter to the particular string, just because that's what we wanted to do.
Let me
If I
see
wanted
your
to display the message, the counter is 5, I will get this in first. We'll get it in second. So you do you have a question?
So check this out. What I think I did that, I said if not posted, then nothing. Like then that's it. Stop, and it skips everything else. This is what fucked me. I remember this assignment. It screwed me up. And I said else. So if you haven't posted, if someone's pushed the button, then skip all this shit. Is what I said. Is that a hack?
Well, it's a what I call
It worked. I got me the grade, man.
Let's see, what are you talking about?
That's the assignment. Assignment number 2.
Okay.
That's what I did after I tried and eventually.
So you've got a no operation there. So
Did you make it pretty, Aaron?
I mean,
he made it work.
But is it pretty? Did you-
No, it's not
But the
pretty.
thing
But
is,
it's
you'll find that three people in this class will do it 3 or 4 different ways.
There's a guy over there who made this pretty. It's got like all this HTML and CSS in it.
That's the way it's supposed to do. We're doing CSS, and I made it look exactly the way the spec says to make it.
See, that's how I did it better. See, so like you said, if you don't post it, then skip the code. Else, then run through the code. That's how I avoid the error messages. We're getting over all the errors. Is that like good enough for you?
No, that is perfect. I'm going to use it because if it works, I'm going to use it. Even
But
though
I'm trying to remember how the other
This is
people
you, so we
did
can
it.
talk about your
But
homework.
it works.
I like your
I think it's less code, it's no code, right?
less code is good.
That's what I think.
Less code.
So I wanted to share with you that we will come back to talk in more depth about the if, the else, and the while loops. This is just to give you enough so you can get some code done. But we will be back and spend an entire chapter on the conditional and while. So there will be a lot more opportunity to practice. Let's see. So this was the while. All right, so there is another way in addition to the while loop that you can use to create loops. And this is the for loop. And you can pretty much do the same between the while and the for. Now, I forgot to tell you something important. You need to make sure to increment your counter in the while loop, otherwise you're going to end up with an infinite loop. Because if you don't have this line here, to change the counter is always going to be less than 5, so this is going to run indefinitely, and you pretty much never want this. So you increment the counter inside the while loop. And you do so by saying, for example, counter plus plus, so that increments by 1, right? And so the for loop will allow you to accomplish the same, except it's a different syntax. With the for loop, when you declare it, inside the body of the for loop, you say this is we start with a counter of 1, so it's kind of reorganizing the same variables in a different format. We start with counter equal 1, and then note you have semicolon. So this is our starting condition. Then this is our ending condition. So we're going to go until counter is equal to 5, as long as it says not equal. Semicolon, we have to add this, and then this is where we increment the counter, not inside the loop, but in part of the declaration. It is going to accomplish the same goal, and then curly braces to contain the body of code that belongs to this for loop. And in this case, it's just one line, and it does exactly the same. So I would like you to do this. It's pretty short too, and then we're going to move on and talk about the future value. But I think it's worthwhile to please do this as well and see how it produces the same result as the while.
Why there's not semicolon after conflict one?
Right here?
Yes.
Because it's the last, there is not one. Good question. But you have to put it after the first two to separate them as statements. Right. Why did you do this? Right?
I've already done Java, so maybe
Yeah. I mean, you still have to make a better use of your time if you do it, you know. But, so if you already do it, then it's fine. Just because there is some differences in syntax, you know. I know you understand loops and for loops and so that all this, but actually this is probably regular Java, but sometimes there are differences. Right? Yeah, you have a error message from 1 6 is going very good. So, the same thing, you get to declare the message outside of the loop. So go ahead and add a line right above the from $sign message equals to empty string. And then you get to like Next is going to go after, if you want it to look like that, put it after the closing curly braces. So as before.
Single quotes instead of semicolons, and then the program doesn't work.
Because the curly brace is the part of the loop, and it's going to do 5 times you want to once. Yes, you do. It was very, so there's something more than just so you can right. No, it won't work, but it's just like the engine is covering for you, but you should put it. Okay, so you have to add a couple of statements to make this work. And what were they? If you just type this like so, it's not going to work. So what else do we have to add? We have to declare the message and set it to equal empty string. And what else? We have to print. We have to echo so that you can see the outcome, right? All right, so let's continue on. There are no questions. So these are a couple examples of more complex loops, and they're going to be used in the future values, so I'll skip over them. More useful loops, I should say. Okay, here is a slide that you want to pay attention to. You can probably all heard about includes in PHP. So you have some options as to how to pass control from one file to another. Well, one way we know already is when you set the action attribute. But also, in some cases, you want a certain condition to include a different file. And so to do so, you're going to use the include function command. And then you give it a path to the file that you want to include. You can also include once, which is going to check if you only include it if it's not included, or you can require a file to be included. The difference between include and require, if you include doesn't work if the file is not there or something like that, you're just going to get the warning. But if you use require, so if you need to make sure that the file is there and before you proceed, the require is going to throw an error. So it just depends what you want to do. But include warning, require error, exit, or die. They're going to essentially kill your script and then move to the other page. So you include your next file that you want to use, exit, and then it stops running. Okay. So these are again functions that are part of the PHP built-in functions. Here are some examples. So you have to pay attention to the structure, to the directory structure. If you're, first of all, parentheses are optional. If your index PHP that you want to include is in the same folder, then you're just going to put it as such. Yeah.
I just wondered, like on the left side of saying include, and then but it had dollar sign then path, so we don't have to put the dollar sign before the path.
So this is what it means is that that's the name of a variable. Somewhere someone went, and that's very common. You usually don't put the paths in the include, but what you do is somewhere you're going to declare a constant, so or a variable $path is equal to dot slash.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Dot index, and that's what that is. For example.
So just read that variable and know that that's the path.
Yeah, that's what it means.
What is the difference between include and include once?
Include once is going to check first if the file is included, so it's less efficient. If you don't need to use include once or require once, it's better to use include or require. But they're available, so just let you know about it. Okay, and then with the exit function, parentheses optional, or you can even add an optional error message. So before you exit, you can put some error message and it's going to, not error message, a message. And then you exit the script. Okay. So here's a realistic way of how you might use this. So let's say that you have a certain variable and you check if it's valid. So this is a variable that we have defined. So if this variable evaluates to true, then we're going to include the process data PHP and exit the current script. Right? And then here as example of if your header PHP is in a different folder, then you have to specify the name of the folder. If you're in the current directory, you can also say dot slash. And then if you want to climb up one, this dot slash is going to climb up one. And then this is climbing up two directories with the last example. So if something is not working, you always want to check your directory structure if you captured it correctly. And that's a good starting point to debug problems. All right, and here is the future value calculator, which will be the starting point for your homework. Let's see here. So if you go inside chapter 2, there is a code folder, and this is the future value starter code. You should also have it from your download, but here it is, and it has a CSS and 2 PHP files, and also it has a link. So let's run this and see what it does. So this is a live link I already have on my uploaded on the server. So let's give me an investment amount. Sean?
25,000.
Okay. Yearly interest rate?
8%.
Okay. Number of years?
10.
I'll pick 15 to be somewhere in the middle.
You don't wanna overblow this program. So.
Right. Okay, so if we go with those numbers, with 8% interest rate, the future value of our investment would be $79,000. So something. So this is what the program does. You input the values and it will produce, it will do a calculation and give you the future value of your investment. And before, just want to show you one other thing here. So when you when I first load the page, this doesn't work, the bar is not magnifying, but the name of the file that we loaded is index.php. Before we were using, the first example we did, we used index.html. More commonly, we'll be using index.php. And then after we do our calculation, then the control here gets changed and the file that displays the results is display results.php. So we have two files we're working with. And if you look at the source code, there are two PHP files as well as the main.css. That's where you're going to take the code and download it to start working on your homework. Sophia already did it, by the way, so you can ask him, I guess, if you have any questions as an additional point of contact. All right. So let's see. So this was the functionality program. Oh, and something else I forgot to show you. It has some validation so that if you leave any of these fields without input, it's not going to continue, it's going to stop and actually give you a error message and say you need to enter a number. So it has data validation added to the program. And only after you put in the valid number, it will allow you to proceed.
Can we assume that they're not going to put in letters, or do we have to check for that too?
You can check for that too with whatever you want to do, but you certainly could by checking if it's a letter or what is the input filter is, I think, text or string, I forget what it is. So why don't you, since we'll be working with this program, go ahead and actually download it and open it in brackets so you can look at something and work with something instead of just watch up here. Download it and you have to open brackets, set it as a project folder, and then we can look through this together.
It's open already?
Brackets on his computer?
Hopefully they should be. So you need to search for brackets on the, if it's not showing, you need to search on the start here brackets.
I think you have to type it in completely.
Here it is. You can, yeah. So
So when I was trying to find it the other day, it would show. Like,
it's not very search friendly. Yeah, I know.
They all should have it. You have to type it in.
Is anyone having any issues downloading the source code? Sometimes that's an issue for students.
Are you not supposed to be using what she has up on her?
I'm not sure.
But I think with these computers,
I don't know if it works in my job or something. Open from
Hey, it just says PHP.
Sorry, what?
It's not there now.
And the fiddle, it's not working.
I'm gonna restart it, see what happens.
I just said those things.
Yes.
Does anybody get brackets on these? Brackets isn't.
It should be, but you have to
Is
search
this
the
the
whole,
stub?
No, that one doesn't have.
and you need to search the whole path through the brackets.
So I went into apps and then looked for it there. But it wasn't.
It's not on my end. You can't download it at one by one.
You don't have admin rights to know.
I know that Bill's made a list that he gave the IT people that said these have to be on our computers, but they haven't done it yet.
One thing you can do is if we don't have brackets, you can open it in Notepad++, which assume,
The formatting is weird, but it helps.
yeah, it's weird, but you can look at it. Or maybe we'll just proceed without looking at it.
Yeah, brackets isn't on this computer either. I actually downloaded Google Chrome for this computer. I started this.
It allows you, that's good. So this is really slowing us down here and causing a problem.
Yeah.
With that Microsoft OneDrive, where you have a text document with highlighted stuff.
I'm not using that.
No, on his, the only thing.
I'm not.
There was like a folder called like.
Well, it's like for other people, or if they need some other substitution for Notepad. We'll still highlight.
Okay.
Talking about Word count?
They should all
Like,
have the same
if you
image.
go to your Microsoft OneDrive, or maybe Google Chrome, Google OneDrive is the same way. If you type in HTML, it'll still highlight the text.
Yeah, I mean, you can use that if you want. You like it?
I like brackets fine.
Yeah, I like brackets fine.
I would like to be able to open multiple windows for different files though.
But still. So if you can't use brackets, then like my suggestion was to try opening in Notepad++, so you can right click. I mean, those machines are pretty.
Maybe it can help with working. Yeah. I think it's just because there's no brackets on it.
Yeah, you want to put it in your own directory. So it'll install it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that option.
This is something kind of cool because you have to like read through and understand what's going on inside.
Yeah, put it under users.
Which is easier than part of the
Yeah. And then, yeah, then.
So if you do have brackets, then you should be able to select the folder to your file, and then you have all the files open and visible in brackets. If you don't have that, then you can try opening it with Notepad++ or with, I guess, OneDrive if some of you are using it. I'm not.
Why are you so adamant about it?
About what?
Not using it? Is it a?
I don't want to use it. I don't have any, well, I prefer to use the different technology.
Okay.
Personal preference.
Personal preference. I did not see my name on this PC. That's very interesting.
Did you log in with your name?
Yeah, but I don't know.
All right, so let's review this code and,
It should be the.
okay, the first thing I wanted to tell you was how do you, so the homework asks you to use the same file to display the, so you guys want to hear this, I'm not going to answer this again if you notice it. How do you tell PHP to display the same file for the results instead of the different file. Well, actually, all you have to do is leave this blank. So if you make this blank, just 2 quotes, then this is going to make it so that the same file you're in is going to be the file that processes the result. Okay, so that's your first thing you need to change, right? Because the homework was to change to the same file and then set the fields in the form to blank spaces, to empty strings, and then instead display the result underneath the form. So that's what we want to do. So the first thing you need to do is, again, replace the action here with just two empty quotes, and this is going to be the same file. You can also say index.php, but you can even just put 2 empty quotes.
Okay.
What was it like if it's instead of
The name of the file.
If you, so you
The
don't
file
have
The
to,
name of the file that it already is.
if you call it
It'll
index,
reload itself.
if you call it, would it work if you put an index.php?
Yeah, if this is the file, it should work as well. I've tested it with the empty string.
It's, yeah, but easier to do with an empty string, but. And then you don't have to worry if someone changes the name for that part anyway.
Exactly. All right, so let's look at this code, and it will require you to, pay close attention. So it's a lot going on here. So what is the first thing we do in that index PHP? So we're looking at the file that when I ran the program and I showed you display the form with the fields, right? So we're saying here so these variables correspond to what? Well, they correspond to the 3 fields in the form. So we're saying if the investment variable is not set, so is set, remember this is a function, and then the not, then we're going to set it to an empty string because at least it's set to something, right? And we do the same with the other 3 fields. So that's our pre-processing we have done on the top of the PHP index.php. And then here is the HTML that displays the form. So we have future value calculator and then some PHP, which here is a part that requires some explanation. So what this does is it says in the PHP, if the error message is not empty, then display the error message. And this works because the first time the error message will be empty. So that's why you don't get an error message the first time through. But after the program runs through, if there is any problem, its error message will not be empty and it's going to display. So this is how this works. And this is why you can get by with the first time not getting any error messages. That's a little tricky.
Now I was going to say that's kind of it's not coming in crystal clear, and that's my problem too. So. Well,
it is confusing. Yeah, it is confusing. What we need to do is we need to be able to display error messages if there is a problem. We don't display error message the very first time.
Don't you have to put the your validation checks right after the is not set or is set? You have to, because error message isn't defined at all.
Well,
that's the only place that it's defined, and that's that it appears in the code in the initial file.
Correct, but then it's going to get populated with error messages if there is an error message.
How?
Right. Okay, so let's keep on going through the code.
Okay.
But here, again, try to keep this in mind, is that the first time you will get no error message because error message will be empty, and then only if there is an error message, this will get displayed. Then we get the form itself. And in the form here, we have the investment interest rate in number of years. And then we submit, which is going to trigger the other form. Sorry, the other page. So from here, because we have said that because the action is display PHP, when we click submit, what happens is then we are now in the display result PHP. And here is where we now have to get the data from the form. And we have done this a few times, and now you can see here how you'd use that filter input function that we learned about today in real
But we're in a
situation.
different file rather than index.
Correct.
And it wasn't the assignment to put it all inside one file.
But I'm not showing you the solution, I'm showing
Oh,
you
okay,
the
okay, then it's the
original,
start point, okay.
the starting point, right? But I did tell you though that you need to change the action to an empty
Right.
code so you can trigger it. So right now we are reviewing your starting point of your program, all right? For homework. And it might be, this was a challenging assignment, so if you guys can get it working, then maybe I will extend it. I think that happened last time too. That's a pretty challenging assignment because you don't really know everything yet. So don't feel discouraged if you're not getting it. I know it's challenging. And the input, filter input is going to again use the input post, which maps to the super global post, the name of the variable. And here is where we're saying, I want you to validate that what the user put here is a float. So this is the third optional argument that I showed you. And we do the same with the other two, where we want the rate to be float, and the number of years we decide that it's going to be an int. They can only put whole number of years. It doesn't have to be like that, but that's how it is. Do we have any questions here?
Why float and not double?
Because this is those come defined, I don't think there is a double defined in the PHP filters. So the default is the double. Right. Somebody defined it like that. Yeah, that's a good question. Right. But they all usually implement this float underneath. In both cases. Anyhow. And then we validate the input. So if the investment, and so why, who can explain why on line 11 can we say this? If investment is equal to false. Why is that possible? What's going on here? Like, Sofian, could you explain this if you?
Can you repeat the question?
Why are we able to check if investment is equal to false here? So we set the investment to the filter input up here.
Because the default value is true.
Because the filter input is going to return true or false. I guess that's what I was asking. So the filter input returns true or false. And that's why we can do this, right?
Why do we use 3 of the equal signs?
I told you this last time. Does anyone remember?
It has to be the same data type as well as the same content.
Because we're checking both if it's the same value and the same data type. So if we want to make sure it's a float and then the value is the same. So that's the triple equal. Does this make sense? Okay. And so here, if this is false, in other words, if we didn't get what we wanted from that field, then we're going to set the error message to some value. And now the error message is no longer empty, right? Okay?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, but this is the starting point and not the solution, so.
Well, because you had a question where the error message is set, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, so basically, if you want to set this to an empty, well, actually, this will be the same for both. Question? Okay, so this will be the same for both. And then you do some additional validation here, and I'd like you to look through it line by line. Yeah.
I'm not really clear on how the investment gets to be set to true or false, and then later on we do calculations with it. Later on we calculate the value, the future value based on that. Are you sure that it's Boolean value?
Yes, because what happens is it's a Boolean value because we assign it here. The filter input will return true or false. So I am sure about that. Right? So otherwise this will not work.
But how are we supposed to do number format on true or false?
It doesn't change the value of the.
So the investment is its number. So here it's a little tricky because the investment, this is the actual variable. The variable gets passed as an argument to the function. So this is the This is what's holding the variable, right? It's actually quite complicated. So this investment is actually the index in the post array, right?
Variable.
It's a variable.
Are you reassigning the investment variable to a number after it's been?
No.
So that's just deciding, saying, okay, I got to check to see if this is a number, return true or false, but then later on, since it is a number, we can use it in calculations. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think what you're thinking is that that filter somehow changes the value of the variable, but it doesn't. So like it just gives information about it. So like investment comes in, it says, is it a number? It says, yeah, it is a number. And then it lets the variable go through. It doesn't change it to a true or false, it lets it go through. So if it's the number 10, it keeps going through, and then it calculates later.
But what it returns is a true or false to say whether, again, we met those conditions, there is something in this variable at all, and this something is a float. So let's keep on going through it, and if it's not clear, we may need to spend more time. I mean, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, as you can see. And then we have all these other if-then-else statements that essentially validate all the three fields that we're taking in terms of, is there something there? And then is it the right? For example, we want the interest rate to be greater than 0. So if somebody put -5, we don't want that, and we're going to stop here. When you go through an else, if-then-else statement, if this is true, then your statement is not going to go further. So you stop at this condition. And in other words, we are not going to continue calculating until this condition is met, right? All right, and then finally, if everything looks good, their message will be set to empty string, right? There is no error there. Now, if there is an error message, how do we get back to index PHP? Well, just like so, as I showed you. So if the error message is empty, we're going to include index.php. Sorry, if it's not empty, we're going to include index.php and exit. So if there is an error message, go back to the index page. Does this help? Right. And if there is an error message, go back to the index page and exit this script, right? And then we calculate the value. So we have a formula here, and we use the for loop we just learned. And the future value is going to get accumulated for the number of years. We use the years from the user input to set how many times the loop is going to run, okay? And then after we do the calculation, we apply the currency. And we display the results. So what you need to do is this has to be moved to the for your homework. The display of the result has to be moved to which page? Index PHP. So that's the other thing you need to do. And there will be a lot more tedious details, but that's pretty much the idea, is that you handle everything from index.php.
Is there a particular reason why we do the number of years as a loop? Is it just so that we could practice a loop?
No, I mean, how otherwise would you, there is no other way to, well.
Multiply.
You want to compound the interest every year.
Yeah, you have to have a loop because you're compound, right?
Whatever the
Or
compound
accumulated.
period is, works.
Right.
Like this should be a continuous. It's a calculus problem.
It's
I
a
don't want to
continuous.
invest in this thing. I don't want to invest in this thing because I want my interest to be
Yeah.
compounded daily.
You are compounded every moment.
Spoke like an accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does it default to the false value if there's nothing in the field?
Yeah, not default, but return is the one you want to use. It's going to return false if there is not one. The function returns false.
So I don't want you to like take away like the answer, but
Oh, I
how
do.
much do you want us to mess with the code? Like, do you want us to change a lot of it, or just a little?
And also, pretty much always, the approach I'll take is to make the least amount of changes necessary to meet the goal. And then once it's working, then you can go, crazy and
Make it all fancy.
make it all
format
fancy.
it,
That's right.
see this,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so I think what I'll do is now just let you maybe look through this and talk it over with your friends or ask some more questions. So just have some time to investigate the code and maybe start thinking about what else you need to do. Now, one thing you need to do is, forgot to talk about, you need to set the fields in the form to empty. So that's the other thing you need to do. And maybe instead of talking about it, think where you need to do this, right? Okay, so think about it, and I'm sure that for most of you it's not going to be immediate, but
If you put it, if you transfer control using the include, it'll start stacking them on top of each other. So you have to change the action on the form.
Right. Well, I did change the action, but I noticed that if you go into the code, I noticed that. Oh wait.
So this is where okay. The action that I had indexed explicitly.
If I'm already on the index page and I have an error message, so I still need to do the include to go to the index page?
No, you don't do the include because it'll cause an infinite loop. Then I don't have the include. I completely took out the include.
He said take the include out. Just exit.
No, don't even have the if you don't want to exit.
Oh, you're talking about, okay. I took the include out because that's what was stacking.
Right.
So I figured that out.
Okay.
But now my error messages are just broken.
They print errors no matter what you do.
Yes.
Yes, that's my problem.
Okay.
And I want stuff to get
Okay.
You know, so I mean, it sounds like we're in the same place.
Yeah.
So I'm trying something that Aaron did, and it works, but it's giving me warnings, which are the output.
Okay.
Whenever I have.
I also added required tags to like HTML5 required tags to each of them to try and like skirt around the PHP validation, but I think I'm gonna be filling that out. Because my PHP validation is broken now. So.
Well, mine validates it, but well, if the first time through it, if you leave it the way that it's validated, it says, I guess it cannot be.
That's what I do.
Right.
So I comment that part out when it says interest rate can't be, and then the ears cannot sell around again.
We are in the same place.
So look, now I'm getting these lousy warning messages. I did what you told me to do.
so you have to post the rate, right? And then here is the value investment, for example.
Okay, Mr. Magic.
No, so wait, now you're
So this is
warning
the
number format.
index. That's how they're stored.
And I don't know why that error is coming out. It wasn't really before.
It would show code in brackets.
And then
Right there.
with filter input,
With your invisible mouse. Did you save and upload it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
That's
my
from the
homework
you have to
program.
pass it. The first is
It's
the
not the classroom one, but
type or input type.
Do we want it so that this part doesn't show until after we've calculated?
you don't want to have the heading
Okay,
again.
the second is the dollar
You
sign
want to just have
investment,
these
That's
columns.
just, that's just another.
imputation mark, okay?
That part of the form.
And the third one is the filter. Doesn't care. Okay, so what happens is
The bracket.
filter input is going to go here.
That's the same.
Check, is there in the post array variable within the
Yeah,
second
let's see,
bracket?
if we go down to 49, it's this,
Yes, there is one.
if I could explicitly cast it to be to a double, it would work fine, but it's, because it's being assigned to, I tried putting this in to see if that would work. It didn't, I'm gonna take it out.
And also, if you have a
So I was trying to
filter,
do something to cast
it's
it
going to
into a
return
numeric.
false if this is not
See,
amount.
I put it in.
So
This is investment is because of the validation turned into
Okay, good question. I'm gonna
text,
ask.
a text number string.
Donnie, did you
No,
want this to be
it wants
set
this
up so that
function
the
wants to have
investment
a double
amount
field.
doesn't show, the results don't
That's the
show
first
until
one.
after the initial amount has been entered, or does it matter? So,
Oh.
here, I'll just read it. So now, it looks like this,
Yeah.
until I put something in, and then, when I put something in,
48 works fine.
This post actually gets.
Interest rate, blah, 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 variable.
No, it's now 48 and 40. It's now
But you want the results to
48 and
return
50
down
because I
here,
took
and you
out that
want
one line.
oh, you want those two, that's right.
I mean,
I just need to
See,
use
watch,
that.
watch here.
So that's the last thing I need to do?
yeah, I think so. If you're using the index PHP, and that's the last thing you need to do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get
You have to delete it every time.
I know, it's just faster if I do it that way.
Yeah.
See, it still shows that it just changes the line number.
Yeah. It's saying that it wants it to be a double.
Wants
right?
the first, it wants the first parameter to be a double field. And the error validation up here.
The validation says that it has to be.
Oh, no, this
close.
right here, the down filters change it to a.
They change it to a string.
Right.
I remember that. Oh. I'm trying to think about what
I wonder if I can just
Because that's
get
true.
rid
The
of
filter should change it to a string. Oh, but wait.
I'm going to take the filter out and see if that works.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing all the validation.
I remember that. They changed it to a string, and then I think there was
Way past the right.
Right, but it has to be in the index. That's what I was trying to remind myself. We're gonna have to write that.
I'm gonna.
Okay. Taking those things out made it work.
Just since I'm doing a policy. Here, I'm doing all of the, I'm doing all, yeah, here.
You have to, you have to actually take it, put it on the server.
You see, I got rid of the filter.
Oh wait, the filter's here. It's on the else.
Oh, it's this thing then, not the filters. It's the defaults. Setting the defaults that causes it. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of that.
So yeah,
the filter. Okay.
but and it works, right?
And
It works because you have this. Because if not post,
right?
If you didn't have that, then
But
it
I still got
like,
warnings when I put in that if not post. Now I'm not.
That's interesting. So yeah, basically by assigning it up there, it was changing it.
The variable into a text field.
Huh.
So
because it was a string, right? Because its original value was a string, it ties the string value in there. Is that what's going on?
because it changes the left-hand side to the data type of the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Except for
an
it goes
empty
to the,
string,
except for it'll go.
an empty string still sees as a string.
Right.
So it's saying you can't do that.
Yeah, it'll turn it into a string. But getting rid of that damn
Let's see.
filter works.
But no
Or not
script,
the filter.
well, I guess, anyway, whatever you guys want to do. Let's see where.
This is interesting.
So what I decided to do is, because this is pretty challenging, I'm actually going to show you the solution, but you still have to work through it to make it work. But it sounds like there is a lot of confusion for the flow. So let me show you what it looks like. Because it seems like it's difficult to say what needs to go where. So let me do this real quick.
Yeah, I was looking at all the solution. This is another one.
But please don't pause, don't pause the video and just copy line by line. That's not the idea here, right?
Pause it.
Right?
Pause the video. And that was the answer. But like.
It's the only thing that's not working for me is the error messages.
This is what Aaron told me to do.
Okay, so let me.
Up there. Now, go up to that, right after the PHP. Oh, no, right before that. Aaron was on the start. So, if,
Oh, it's just where you put like the displays.
if, and then open parentheses. Exclamation point, dollar sign underscore post, underscore, dollar sign, yeah, you got it. And put it after that, after the parentheses.
Should be an underscore on both sides of those?
No underscore after post. Open, okay, then, open bracket and close bracket. And so then that means don't do anything. Including else afterwards.
All right, so take a look if you feel like you need some help here, or if you got this working, then I guess you can, do whatever you need, something else, work on something else. So we only have one PHP file instead of two. And so we're going to start by checking if we have an investment. And then the default values will start by setting them to empty string. We have to get the data from the form, so this is the next. One thing you can maybe do is put some comments, notes as to the comments which represent the outline. And I'm curious if you did this the same or not. So maybe you can show next time a solution that would be interesting. And it doesn't, there is not only one way per se to get this done. But you have to get the data from the form. So we know this chunk, right? That's where we get the data from the form, as we were just showing here. Validation of the investment. These are all these if and else statements. So that's what comes next. After we get the data, we have to validate. You have all these in the other file. And then if you have valid data, then what is your next sequence of events? Calculate. If you did the calculation, what is your next sequence of events? Format. Okay, format. And then, since you need to clear the boxes, this would be a good place to do it. So if you've done everything else, you have already formatted your input, your output rather. And at this point, you're going to clear the boxes by assigning empty strings to those three variables. Now, all this is in one gigantic if statement. All the way down to here. So we're doing all this only if we have a valid investment in the form, right? And then otherwise, if we don't have that, then we have to essentially reset all the variables to empty strings because we don't have valid investment. And then what is the next sequence of events? We need to print the output, which in this case we're not doing in the form. So, okay, sorry. First of all, we're going to populate the form with the empty strings, right? Does this make sense? And then under the form, we're going to add the label and span to actually display the result. So that's the sequence of what you need to do. And it's all in one file. And just work through it. It's okay. It will get easier, I promise.
I'll go through it. Aaron showed me. So my assignment's done.
Okay, well then help somebody else.
Mine's different than yours.
Well, if it works, it's okay. It doesn't have to be the same. All right. You really have to spend a lot of time looking through the code so you can understand the original code before you can make a change. So you should be studying the code.
The order.
It just takes a lot of time.
Sorry, my order is I'm setting the default values as nothing. I'm getting the data from the form, which is the next step that I have to do. The next step here should be to validate the data, and the data validation is not happening.
Yeah.
what's interesting is, your HTML order is added in everything. I have it, my set, and I do my year. I do the characters in.
Right, my first one is here, and then my second one is here.
Right, no, but I took this first form and put it above my LC. Because what's happening is it's running this code and then it's looking at the value. So it's running all your code and then it's looking at what your value is.
This one should be
Above your PHP.
above
Because
the.
otherwise it's running your PHP and then after it's ran through that, it's hitting the area where the value is.
So then this you want to capture the data from the form and then validate
And then
it.
filter it.
Okay, so I
The
want to
form
close my
has to be
PHP.
above the filter.
Close my PHP here.
You're gonna want to.
Do you have your,
Yeah.
do you have your form?
You want to do PHP this, then your form.
So you're closing your PHP. So the answer is yes. Close my PHP.
Yeah, but you want to close it after the is set.
Right after I get the data from the form.
Well, you want to like first is it set, and then you want if it's not set it to 0, and then say
So
here's
you're
my
closing it after this.
and then putting my HTML.
Is the interaction between the HTML and the PHP. And then that's my form.
And then after your form,
And then I want to run.
then you want to run your filter, and then you want to run your
Modules.
Why is that wrong? Oh, question mark. So then I'm running all the rest of my PHP. And then I'm running the second form.
Yeah, and the way you did your if else on that, like if it hasn't been posted or hasn't been run, then skip. You know, if not post, skip, else, go through the code. So now when you run it, it's never been run, so it should give you an error.
It should give me errors.
Nope, because it's never been.
No, but I should get an error if there's no information, right?
Yes.
That's what the no post, that's what the no post.
So we'll give it.
Right.
Someone get an error if I put a 0. I'll figure it
Just think
out.
about the order.
Yeah, no, that helps some, and I'll work on it the rest of the day.
How do you know what you want from the, on the assignment, there's just pictures, so.
You don't know what.
How would I know?
I guess I don't.
Yeah.
Am I gonna be taking short?
Yeah, basically you're taking almost everything and putting it it's a matter of like, you have to calculate it. Yeah, so it's like for instance.
Do I have an Amy.Pierce at Seattle Central now?
It's set.
I think so. Well, I got a Jesse.co.
There's nothing, the page loads set it to the site, so there's an error.
What's my
And
password?
then after that,
You're gonna have to link in between.
This,
so this is correct. And then you're going to remember and say, so you can think about the different parts, like break it into blocks. So like,
Yeah, won't let me have it there.
you have to go like, what you have essentially
I'll go off
is
in the.
on your index page, you've got a filter. So you've got these. This is
Really?
that is set. Not
Who
set.
tried to call me?
So you have
I keep forgetting.
not set.
I know. I'm just turning off those
Set
alarms.
number 2. That should just be right, right? And then you've got the form. Which is where the input is. And then after that, so then, but then on the, that's one part of the display results. On the display.
Very top of this
Actually,
one.
I would say that filter to get all the inputs.
We've got validation.
And then
Oh,
you make sure that they're all validated.
So like a lot of this is just thinking of it in chunks. And then okay, what order that to be in for it to make sense? Because it's only from the top. You want to make sure you don't like it's just else before you sit down. If else nothing, so you just things follow the thing. So it's a matter of thinking like what order I put them in. Filter validation. What else is on this one? And then
Oh, yeah. It's not gonna be
let's go that.
I downloaded code, I can't find the code. I tried to download it and I can't access it.
And then filter it. And you see if there's something wrong. And yes, you can access it. And then
Yeah, it's just saying the not set to the filter.
So all that stuff's got to be in between each
yeah, but when you're ready, these are all works. So you're gonna go, okay, if it's not set, we need to set it.
So you guys keep on using Edge.
And then you're gonna need to do what?
I don't think this works in Edge very well.
But
You validate it.
So we need to use
that's the thing
Chrome,
is
so
like,
then
you have to, the thing is this, if you're reading code from top to bottom, right?
I did, I couldn't.
Then you got it.
It's set to 0, and then filter it.
And validate, just seeing what these.
I tried to go down.
You're gonna need to validate it eventually, but think about this right now, so you set it, then so you were saying that we need to filter it next, right? So you want, where does it form? Then we're gonna, it's a form where you can put the information, you're saying put it here, right? You're gonna filter it, then validate it, and then print it in the
let's
form and.
see, I don't want to do this. So all the problems have to do with this.
You want to
That's how
change?
the code works. Only
I
problem
might
is,
go out,
as
so
the,
maybe
it's
permission
the
is
goes
just
to top to bottom, if they say, okay, it's not set and set it, then it's gonna say, okay, filter. Let's see if you can send it through. The filter code is running right now, and the validation code is running,
If you
but the
can't,
code still has
if
the
you can't,
So we're
on
gonna
the same page with the fields empty,
this form, you have to
send
send
it to
out
another page.
and put it.
Yeah, I mean, you're
Not
doing
that
this,
it's
you
set.
know, you don't, even if you can't finish it, just write as much as you can.
I don't know anything.
No, that's, no, so the form.
See, if you look, when you look at the code, you're going to see that there's 92 pages in
Yeah, I know, I
the
have
page.
one on it. So, I have to. I can, so I have one on both, PHP.
Yes.
No, that can stay there, because this is saying, when the page initially loads, set it to a 0 value.
Looks like it's working. So then we're going to try to download from Chrome.
The way this is set up. So you have.
Did you download the
not
source
set
code on
as 0.
flash drive?
And then you say the form.
I did, but I don't know where it is.
That goes
That's the
into
problem.
Could you log into your Google Drive and then I'll see it?
Right, I'm looking at.
So this is the regular. I'm making the rest of this form. I'm going to have. Filter validation.
And the filter, yep.
I'm gonna put it together in the same
I managed to make it work. How did that here? Or, and then there's through here and there.
Okay, let's
Filter.
Where in this book can I find? I don't know. So are we missing one?
So then I come over and this is for filtering.
Google Drive.
Are we missing?
I typed in,
Right, so that's.
type in Google Drive and Google Drive.
I can
And
say
it
the
will
page
show you
numbers.
like the top results of Google Drive.
Yeah.
And then you click on that, and then it'll say, do you want to sign in? You say, yeah.
It's a different side.
Yeah.
Is there a password?
No, it's the same password as the one you used.
How about page
You can
80?
also, when you're on your Google, or when you're in Gmail, on the top right will be this little symbol that has like, 6 squares lined up. So you click on that, you can drop down.
Page 80 is going to 8, sorry, 84.
So if you're logged into your Gmail, I can show you that.
Doing this before.
That's the way I do it.
Hey, Aaron,
1 minute.
Yeah, I don't know where.
So we just download the phone, you get from.
So see this little, you're logged in, right?
This is going.
Okay, so go ahead and log in.
This is going to go to the original. Please understand that first.
So I think it's where my bracket is, it's causing.
So if you're logged in, it'll say your name right here. And have your
So
symbol.
for the
If you click right here,
else statement, where are you closing the bracket? What line are you closing the
and it
bracket?
will take you there. So now if you sign in, it'll open you up inside your Google Drive.
Here?
But that's how you get in. It's just, you gotta password.
I think,
One last question.
let me see. Let me look and tell you for sure.
So,
Yeah, I put it right after that.
And you're giving the error messages appropriately?
Yeah,
So what else is the difference between what I have and what you have? What other changes is- so you have this
oh, I put the validation.
like on this side.
above the form?
You're right.
So you put the form below the validation?
Right. I put all, aside from the embedded echoes, echoes that you put after the calculation. You know, those are, yeah, those echoes, well, you know, those echoes there. These ones up there. You don't have any echoes. Oh, go down, I'm sorry, go down lower. Now, where's, let me see your output.
It's right here.
So your actual output, your, when you run it.
Oh, well, right here.
Yeah, but let me show you the next. When.
Okay, well, how about you post up here?
It's
So like
just part
here,
of this
so like
form.
after I enter this and I calculate, you want the top to set back.
Oh, so you got echoes.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, yeah, echoes in the form.
But shouldn't that happen automatically anyway?
My error messages are not showing me, like something has happened to my error messages.
Like before I. It's gonna happen.
No, I'm just gonna have this book out.
Before this form.
I don't have a class until 6.
So think like this, so the page that initially loads, and then you're gonna, and you enter information. It's gonna go from top to bottom.
I want to check something.
And so that it's
No,
not set.
my HTML, but my.
But also when you click submit, that's when these are going to be
But I
created.
didn't
in the
ever-
streams.
I don't remember creating code that actually clears.
So you just have to have
You've taken
under the form.
web stuff before. When you have field, how do you set the focus on the field?
What are you talking about?
You know, when you initially start it, having the cursor appear in a certain field.
Oh,
So here is what they will look like.
So it's called focus or something else. I can't remember what that is.
I don't know what.
Maybe it's Android programming.
I don't know, it's interesting that
After
you can just say,
form.
Okay, so I use,
so do,
Yeah.
I need to know, like, I need to focus on field when I.
Yeah, you have to do a tab.
Let's see.
Not as bad as
No, where is the focus on the field?
Inside space. That's how.
Like, there's nothing, there's no focus on the field, I actually click on the field.
Yeah, right.
So why does that happen?
Well, I just, you know, I'm, you know, that's just easier than having to click on the field.
Right here, it's autofocus.
Autofocus.
So I got that as an attribute.
yeah.
That's
So
not
if
very
you
important.
use,
You could use
in
it
that
in
first
different
one,
view, I just always, yeah. Use lower stuff is when you're using a.
Above the break, you mean?
Yeah,
Is it just-
Okay, so
It's one or the other.
autofocus.
Is it one word?
So, yeah, one word. So add it, yeah, under that first input, that first field, there's, you got one above.
Oh.
So is this open and close statement?
Yeah.
Or do I have to put something in the?
Auto-
No, so it's an attribute, within this input.
Oh, got it, got
Is
it.
it equals to true or? No, just
Just
auto.
autofocus, nothing else.
There's no, okay.
Thank you, Sean. Where did you find that? It's not in this book. No, I just looked on, W3.
Well, that's interesting, but it still doesn't solve my problem of why the damn error messages are not working. Sorry, I'm a little frustrated because I just can't think of any other way to troubleshoot this right now.
And then we can print that individual semicolon.
See, the reason I put I put all my validation at the top because
You keep saying that, but put it above what? I mean,
above the forms. The first time through, it doesn't validate it.
So you put your validation above the form, and where is your first form? Where in your sequence is your first form?
There's only one form.
There's two forms.
Yeah.
And then the
One
same.
Yeah,
There's the form that you do the input with, and then there's the form that you.
It's the same form.
Oh, you just combined everything together? Do you have two bodies in your form then, or did you just stick?
Just one body,
And you have two mains, or put it on?
one main, one form, one body.
Okay, let me see what happens if I.
Can
you put your form at the bottom? Below everything, or where is it?
I go up to the top.
Do you have your form in two different divs? Or is
No,
it-
well, yeah, there's a div for the button. The button is in a different div. But the rest of the form, and then after the, then you gotta put in your echoes after the button.
So there's a
You
different
need to
button.
keep your button, you eliminate there, you got one up there, so then another, I put it in another div, you got a class. Perhaps I can give it a class.
What class did you give it?
I mean, it doesn't matter, I just gave it a class, so it'd be separate from the other two. I didn't put the class in CSS, but
And this is your new bit to
Let's see.
You can make it on.
How is hers wasn't formatted that way, this way, right? Just the day.
And where do you have your form?
That's exactly what I thought.
Oh, she wants.
Yeah.
it's after all the validation.
This is.
So slash is gonna be same.
Doing it that way based on how I've done it.
Here, capital Y.
I'll fool around with it later. I'm kind of done right now. My head is stuffed, so.
I understand that.
If I get super irritated, I might email you if you don't mind.
No, that's cool.
Because I have your info.
Yeah, autofocus work, John.
Yeah.
And then try to get.
That's cool, actually.
See if you can get variables.
On what?
In the form.
So that the cursor starts out in the field instead of having to tab to it.
Yeah. I hate having.
Me too.
Well, it is nice though because you can just, once it's there, you can tab.
Right.
It's just a click, you guys.
Yeah. With your mouse, so I like to keep my hands on the finger.
No, I mean, it's a nice touch. It is a nice touch.
So let me tell you this though, because this is like, if you know the order of those pieces, then in the end, it's a matter of figuring out how to make it run all the way through without getting an error. But it will work, which will only get an error. So here, just like, you have an offset setting. You have your first form where you then you do your filter, and then your validation section, then your calculus section. So all that has to happen for you to know what to put in the result, correct?
Oh, okay.
And don't worry about
You're going to set up a web or a map.
right, but I'm saying like if you can get the
No,
rest
that's
of
why
it
we
to
were
work,
doing it in
here,
class.
the
You
rest
don't
of
have to use class, nice one. We just want to do
have a drop in the title.
the line for the map allows you to run this whole page instead of without doing.
Okay.
So we can do it because.
That's right.
We can do it.
Didn't really disappointing. I was just.
Or do it very well. So once everything's already done, I would opt for it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, we'll get more time. Maybe I'll make it please do on Wednesday so you guys have time to ask questions. Maybe that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
So, I actually.
variable change is happening. So check this out though. You don't need to make it this clear because what's gonna happen is when you click submit, it's gonna refresh. See like the form action, it's gonna get resubmitted. Right?
Finish up, Matt. All done.
The chip at the top
No.
is gonna set it back to 0. But in the meantime, the values that were there are gonna calculate. I never
My thing doesn't work. My thing really does some of the stuff it's supposed to do. The other stuff it says I'm not doing that.
That's correct.
Good.
So that makes, I understand that.
No, no.
So,
Yeah, I was saying that,
this is where it should
Well,
be.
maybe you know what the cuts are. Yeah. Try it. I'm telling you, like, that's like,
This year, of your organization.
and that's it. But what's interesting is that there's gonna be a couple, at least, there's like 1 or 2 little things. It takes time to sort out.
Okay, so I think if you want to compare
Here.
Oh, yeah,
All these hooks and top.
Okay, I'm going to close up the homework due for
Would you say all
next
these what?
Thursday, so we get one more time to meet.
I've got a test, really heavy textbooks for my math supplies.
Which is what?
So I can put the minds at ease.
You're right, you're right about the health.
So were you able to download the files, Zeke? Okay, if you can wait a couple minutes, I will.
Post the solution.
You can.
Actually, I got it to work.
I still can't get the error messages to work, but I'll figure it out later tonight.
Well,
I feel like I'm very close.
I mean, you guys were not even supposed to finish all this in class, right? So-
But we like to finish in class. We
Yeah.
like to.
I like to be finished before.
Then we can do other stuff like figure out how to make it